lost between stars. Then she reached for my hand. The Crimson Drift. The ancient ruins of Gistin's moon had yielded their secrets reluctantly, but Commander Nora Vex felt the familiar thrill of discovery as she catalogued the final artifact samples. Her research vessel, the Stellar Compass, hummed quietly in the vacuum above the dead satellite, its archaeological bay packed with relics from a civilization that had vanished 2 millennia ago. "Fascinating," she murmured, examining a crystalline tablet covered in spiraling script. The linguistic pattern suggests they were trying to document something urgent, something about energy fluctuations in. The ship's proximity alarm shrieked to life. Nora's head snapped up as emergency lighting bathed the lab in pulsing red. She stumbled toward the bridge, tablet still clutched in her hands, as the stellar compass shuddered around her. "Computer, report," she commanded, strapping herself into the captain's chair. "Massive gravitational anomaly detected," the AI responded in its maddeningly calm tone. "Unknown energy signature approaching from Sector 7. Recommend immediate departure." Through the viewscreen, space itself seemed to be twisting. A ribboning distortion of crimson and gold stretched across the star field like a wound in reality. The anomaly pulsed with hypnotic rhythm, beautiful and terrifying. "Can we plot a course around it?" "Negative. The anomaly is expanding at 0.73, light speed. Impact in 47 seconds. Nora's fingers flew over the navigation controls, but even as she initiated emergency protocols, she knew it was too late. The distortion engulfed them like a living thing, and reality dissolved into streaks of impossible color. When consciousness returned, Nora found herself hanging upside down in her harness, the acrid smell of burned circuits filling her nostrils. Emergency power cast everything in dim amber light. She unclipped herself carefully, wincing as her boots hit the ceiling that had become the floor. The artificial gravity was failing intermittently, making each step unpredictable. "Computer?" Silence. She tried her personal communicator. "This is Commander Vex to any Galactic Authority vessel. Mayday, Mayday." Static answered her. The emergency kit yielded a portable scanner and basic survival supplies. Her medical diagnostics showed minor contusions and a mild concussion. She'd been unconscious for almost 6 hours. The atmospheric readings from outside made her heart sink. She was no longer in space. Somehow, impossibly, the stellar compass had crashed on solid ground. The airlock mechanism groaned in protest, but eventually cycled open. Nora stepped into a world painted in shades of crimson. The sky above was a roiling, massive red-tinged clouds that seemed to move with purpose rather than wind. The air tasted metallic and felt thick, like breathing liquid copper. Her ship had carved a deep furrow through what appeared to be a crystalline plain. Structures rose in the distance. Not quite buildings, not quite rock formations, but something, organic and intentional. Everything was bathed in that strange red light that seemed to emanate from the ground itself. "Okay, Nora," she said aloud, her voice strange in the heavy atmosphere. "You've been in worse situations." That was a lie, but saying it helped steady her nerves. She activated her scanner and began documenting everything. The planet registered as Valdris Prime according to her star charts, but that was impossible. Valdris Prime was listed as uninhabitable, consumed by some kind of dimensional instability 50 years ago. No one should be able to survive here, let alone land safely. As she worked establishing a perimeter around her crashed vessel, Nora became aware of being watched. It wasn't a sound or movement, more like a pressure at the edge of consciousness. She'd felt similar sensations while exploring ancient ruins, that sense of presence that archaeologists learn to trust. "Hello?" she called, one hand moving instinctively to the pulse pistol at her hip. "I'm not hostile. My ship crashed and I'm just trying to assess the situation. You shouldn't be able to survive here." Nora spun toward the voice, weapon half drawn. A figure stood perhaps 20 meters away, near one of the organic structures. He was tall and lean, unmistakably human, despite the strangeness of his appearance. His skin had a pale, almost translucent quality that seemed to glow faintly in the crimson light. Dark hair hung to his shoulders, and his eyes, even at this distance, she could see they were an unusual shade of silver blue. The atmospheric density, Should have killed you within minutes, he continued, stepping closer with careful, measured movements. Your cellular structure isn't adapted for the electromagnetic interference. Neither should you, Nora replied, not lowering her weapon but not raising it either. If this is really Valdris Prime, it's supposed to be a dead zone. A smile flickered across his face, sad and knowing. Dead is relative. I'm Cale Thorne, formerly of the Dimensional Research Expedition Aurora 7, though that was 43 years ago by standard galactic time. The name triggered a memory from her academy studies. Aurora 7 was lost in the Valdris incident. All hands presumed dead. Presumed correctly, for the most part. Cale had moved close enough now that she could see the fine network of silver, lines that traced patterns under his skin, pulsing gently like a secondary circulatory system. I was the only one who adapted when the gateway collapsed and trapped us here. The planet's energy field changes you if it doesn't kill you first. Nora lowered her weapon completely. Something in his manner, the profound weariness in his voice, convinced her he meant no harm. How is it possible that I can breathe here? That's what puzzles me. Kyle circled her crashed ship, examining the hull with obvious expertise. Your vessel shouldn't have survived entry through the dimensional barrier, and you shouldn't be standing here talking to me. The electromagnetic field that surrounds Valdris Prime is lethal to unmodified human physiology. Maybe I'm modified, and don't know it. Nora activated her medical scanner, running it over herself. The readings were normal except for elevated neural activity in regions associated with spatial perception and electromagnetic sensitivity. Interesting, Cale murmured, studying the scanner's display. May I? When Nora nodded, he took the device and turned it on himself. The readings that appeared made her catch her breath. His entire nervous system showed massive modifications, extensive enough that he was barely recognizable as human anymore. The planet did this to you? The planet saved me, he corrected gently. When the dimensional gateway collapsed, Valdris Prime was flooded with chaotic energy from multiple reality layers. My colleagues died quickly. The interference fried their neural pathways. But something in my brain chemistry allowed me to absorb it, redirect it. He handed back the scanner, and their fingers brushed during the exchange. The contact sent a jolt through Nora's system. Not painful, but intense, like touching a live circuit. Cale jerked his hand back as if burned. Sorry, he said quickly. I haven't had physical contact with another person in over 4 decades. The energy transfer can be overwhelming, but Nora was staring at her scanner. During that brief touch, the device had registered both their biosignatures simultaneously, and the readings showed something extraordinary. Their neural patterns had synchronized, creating a harmonic resonance that seemed to stabilize the chaotic electromagnetic readings around them. Kyle, she said slowly, I think I know why I survived the crash. As if responding to her realization, the crimson sky above them began to shift, clouds swirling into new patterns. The crystalline ground beneath their feet hummed with a frequency that Nora could feel in her bones. Somewhere in the distance, one of the organic structures pulsed with brighter light. Valdris Prime was waking up. And for the first time in 43 years, Cale Thorne was no longer alone. The touch that bridged worldscale had forgotten what it felt like to have hope. For 43 years he had wandered Valdris Prime alone, his transformed body sustained by the planet's chaotic energy, while his mind slowly adapted to isolation. He had built a shelter from the living crystal formations, learned to cultivate the bioluminescent fungi that grew in the deeper caverns, and created routines that kept madness at bay. But hope, that had died with his colleagues all those decades. Ego now watching Nora work on her ship's quantum transmitter with focused determination. He felt something stirring in his chest that he had almost forgotten how to name. The resonance cascade damaged more than just the primary circuits, Nora muttered, her head buried in an access panel. Sparks flew as she rerouted power conduits. Your planet's electromagnetic field is interfering with every system I try to bring online. Not my planet, Cale replied automatically, though the correction felt hollow. After 4 decades, Valdris Prime was more home than Earth had ever been. And the interference isn't random. The energy patterns follow a mathematical progression that mirrors organic neural networks. Nora emerged from the panel, copper hair catching the crimson light. Oil streaked across her cheek, and Kale found himself wanting to reach out and wipe it away. The impulse terrified him. Physical contact had become foreign, dangerous. His modified nervous system could overload an unprotected human brain through simple touch. You're saying the planet thinks more than that. Kale gestured toward the horizon where the organic structures pulsed in slow, rhythmic patterns. When the dimensional gateway collapsed, it didn't just flood this world with raw energy. It created a consciousness, a collective intelligence formed from the interaction between multiple reality layers. And you're connected to it. It wasn't a question. Over the past week, Nora had observed how the crystal formations brightened. When he passed, how the atmospheric pressure stabilized in his presence, how even the weather seemed to respond to his emotional state. I'm part of it, Kale admitted. The energy modifications to my nervous system created a bridge between human consciousness and whatever Valdris Prime became, but it's been incomplete, like trying to have a conversation with only half the words. Nora set down her tools and studied him with those sharp archaeologist eyes that seemed to see through everything. Until I arrived. Until you arrived, he agreed softly. The truth had become undeniable over the past several days. Whenever they worked close together, the planet's chaotic energy patterns smoothed into harmonious waves. The atmospheric interference that should have been killing Nora gradually lessened. Most remarkably, the quantum transmitter, which should have been impossible to repair without specialized facilities, had begun responding to their combined biosignatures. Show me, Nora said suddenly. Show you what? The connection. I need to understand what we're dealing with if we're going to get a message out. She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the metallic tang of Valdris Prime's atmosphere on her skin, mixed with something indefinably human. I felt it when we touched before, the synchronization. Kale's modified heart rate spiked. It could be dangerous. The energy transfer is the only thing that's been keeping me alive here. Nora reached out slowly, palm upward in invitation. I've been monitoring my biosigns. Every time we've had contact, my cellular adaptation to this environment increases. You're not hurting me, Kale. You're changing me. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Of course, that was why she had survived the crash, why she could breathe Valdris Prime's atmosphere, why the planet hadn't killed her immediately like it had everyone else. Somehow, her neural patterns were compatible with the modifications the planet had made to him. Slowly, fighting every instinct that screamed about the danger, Kyle reached out and took her hand. The connection exploded through both of them like lightning. But instead of pain, it brought clarity, a sudden expansion of consciousness that encompassed not just their individual awareness, but the vast alien intelligence of Valdris Prime itself. Kale felt Nora's mind brush against his, her scientific curiosity and stubborn determination, mixing with his decades of accumulated knowledge about the planet's systems. Through their joined consciousness, they could perceive Valdris Prime as it truly was, not a dead world corrupted by dimensional instability, but a newborn entity struggling to understand its own existence. The chaotic energy patterns weren't random interference, but attempts at communication, like an infant reaching out to touch something beyond its comprehension. It's lonely, Nora whispered, though her lips hadn't moved. The words formed directly in their shared mental space. All these years it's been trying to talk to you, but the connection was incomplete. Because I was only half the equation, Kale realized. Human consciousness modified by planetary energy, but still fundamentally isolated. It needed a bridge, someone whose neural patterns could complete the circuit. Nora's excitement blazed through their connection. The quantum entanglement properties in my brain chemistry, probably inherited genetic markers from some deep space exposure generations back, they're compatible with your modifications. As if responding to their understanding, Valdris Prime pulsed around them. The organic structures brightened, and for the first time in decades, Kale felt the planet's communication not as overwhelming static, but as recognizable thought patterns. The consciousness was vast and strange, nothing like human intelligence but unmistakably aware and desperately eager to connect. Through their joined perception, they felt the planet's history, the moment when dimensional barriers collapsed and raw creative energy flooded through reality layers. The birth of consciousness from chaos, the long years of solitude broken only by Kale's half-comprehensible presence, and underneath it all, a profound need for connection that resonated through every crystal formation and energy pattern. "It doesn't want to trap us here," Nora said aloud, breaking the mental link as she stepped back. Her eyes were bright with tears, overwhelmed by the planet's loneliness. "It's trying to help. The quantum transmitter, the repairs that should be impossible. Valdris Prime is enhancing our work." Kale nodded, his own eyes wet. Feeling the planet's consciousness so clearly had been like finally hearing a voice he'd been straining to understand for half a lifetime. It knows we don't belong here permanently, but it wants to understand what connection feels like before we go. Over the following days, they worked together with newfound purpose. With Valdris Prime's assistance channeled through their neural link, the quantum transmitter repairs progressed at impossible speed. The planet seemed to learn from their combined knowledge, its consciousness growing more sophisticated with each shared mental connection. But as the transmitter neared completion, an unexpected problem arose. "The signal will reach Galactic Authority within 72 hours, Nora reported, though her voice lacked the satisfaction Kale expected. "Rescue ships can be here within a month." Kale watched her work, noting the tension in her shoulders, the way she avoided his eyes. "That's good news." "Is it?" Nora finally looked at him, and he saw his own conflict reflected in her expression. "Once I leave Valdris Prime, the neural modifications will fade. My brain chemistry will revert to baseline human parameters. And the planet will lose its connection again." Kale finished quietly. They stood in silence as the implications settled around them. Valdris Prime had tasted consciousness, communication, the joy of genuine connection. Returning it to isolation felt like a cruelty beyond description, but asking Nora to strand herself on an alien world, to accept permanent transformation, was equally impossible. "There might be another way," Nora said suddenly. "The quantum transmitter, we could modify it to maintain a communication link. Even at interstellar distances, our neural patterns might be able to bridge the gap if we—" She was reaching for him as she spoke, and when their hands met, the solution blazed through their shared consciousness like sunrise. Not permanent separation, not forced exile, but something new. A three-way connection that could span the distance between worlds. Valdris Prime pulsed around them in what could only be described as joy. "It would mean regular returns," Kyle said, softly. "Spending part of your time here, part in the wider galaxy." "It would mean neither of us has to be alone anymore," Nora replied. "Any of us." As rescue ships appeared in Valdris Prime's crimson sky a month later, they found something unprecedented. Not stranded survivors desperate for evacuation, but the birth of a new kind of relationship between human consciousness and planetary intelligence. And at the center of it all, two people who had found in each other the missing piece of a cosmic conversation that spanned worlds.